This is a learning video to review the ideas we worked on in class today. We're using a number line as a model to represent the equations that are hidden under this little thing here, so I'm going to move it out of the way, but I may need that in a bit. So for each one of these questions here, we can make a model, and I'm just getting a tool here so you can follow along with me as I model this. So let's see, there we go. The first one we did in class was, of course, a simple one. It was just doing something we were already comfortable with, like 5 plus 7. And I always ask you to start at 0 and then point to the first number. So I'm going to point to 5. And then I'm going to look at the second part. And of course, this is an easy one because you already know adding from when you were very, very little. But by showing all the pictures here, I think the graphs will make more sense. So I'm going to add 7, so I'm going to go 7 units to the right. And then that tells me that my answer, of course, has to be 12. Not only do you know that there, but you'll see that here. And then as we continue going through this, we are going to go through each problem like this and continue that process. So on this next problem 2, it says 5, so I start at 0 and I go to 5. Let me put that green back in there. I'm going to go to 5 again, but instead of adding 7, which would put us over here, I like to think of that negative as adding the opposite of 7, which would put us there. So in other words, when I see a negative here, I think of it as opposite. And so that's why I flipped my line from the left to the right. In other words, if I were just adding plain old 7, I would be here, but I'm adding the opposite of 7, so I'm there. Which then tells me my answer is -2. So when I look at the third problem, I have 5 take away 7. Again, that's an elementary level problem, but we want to practice these elementary level problems because they help us understand the harder problems. So when I look at this problem, I still start at 0 and go to 5. I don't know why that didn't turn green. Try again. So go to 5, start at 0 and go to 5, but I'm subtracting 7. And so when I subtract, if I subtract a positive, I head backwards to the left. And that tells me my answer is again -2. Even though this problem looks different than problem 2, they in essence have the same result. So when I look at problem 4, I have -5, so that's different, and I'm adding -7. So I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to go to -5. And I have to add -7. So instead of adding +7, which would be sending to the right, I'm adding the opposite of 7, which sends me 7 units to the left. So in other words, this is 5 units to the left and 7 more units to the left. So my final answer is negative 12. Okay, now we're going to take a look at 5 take away negative 7. So I start at 0 and I go to 5. If I were subtracting 7, I would go left 7 units, but I'm subtracting the opposite of 7, which means I'm going to do the opposite. So my final answer here is 12. Looking at this next problem, 6. I'm going to start at 0 and go to negative 5. And then I'm going to add 7. So I'm just going to go 7 units to the right. That makes my final answer positive 2. Quite a bit of little screens here. Let's see if I can get this to move. I'll pause. Okay, that's now out of the way. This last example, we're doing negative 5 take away 7. So we will go to negative 5 first, starting at 0, negative 5, and then subtract 7. So I'm just subtracting 7. So I'm going to continue to go to the left. My final answer is negative 12. Now, one thing I want to say is the math teachers at LMS really like these number diagrams, but sometimes your book says this just slightly different. So I'm going to add a page in here and look at these examples side by side. And if I take one of these number lines and make a new number line here, I just want to show you that the book sometimes does this a little bit different. So, for example, if this is 0, and that's 5, and that's 10, and that's negative 5. And that's negative 10. Let me stretch that line out. If we were to look at one of the examples, like example 5 on the left there, we see it's 5 take away negative 7. Sometimes the book will say start at 5. And they'll just put a dot there. And then they use the arrow. So then if we look at that, it start at 5, and then we're going to use the arrow. If I were subtracting 7, I'd be here, but I'm subtracting the opposite of 7. So I'm over here, which, as you see in that other example, would have put us at 12. And although it looks a little different, it still gives the same answer. But we have found that this diagram here is a little bit less informative than this diagram here. So when you do your work, we want you to always draw pictures like the ones on the left, but be able to read pictures like the ones on the right. All right, good luck.